Good morning. This is the first in a series of videos I am going to record on UBOS. UBOS is the Linux distro that I'm developing that makes it easy for normal people to run web applications at home on hardware that they own. Hardware such as the Raspberry Pi 3, which I have right here. It's very nice and still cheap $35 board with a quad-core processor that is ideal for projects such as running Nextcloud, which is what we are going to install on UBOS today. What's Nextcloud? You can think of it as an open source implementation of Dropbox. So if you have files to share in your family, for example, you could run Nextcloud on your Raspberry Pi 3 on UBOS at home, and nobody will ever get at your files. They stay at home in your own home on hardware that you own. So in this video we are going to go through the entire process from a blank Raspberry Pi 3 until we have Nextcloud installed and running. It is a process that has a few steps, but it is so much easier with UBOS than any alternative that I can think of. You do not have to be a professional Linux geek to actually install this. So first we're going to start by putting this board here into the foundation case. The foundation here has come up with a very nice case for Raspberry Pi boards that is very modular. So if you are intending to use your Raspberry Pi for not just projects like web applications, but also for Internet of Things projects, and you could do both at the same time, then it is a very modular case that looks quite stylish. Once assembled, here it is, has all the ports open. I labeled it Raspberry Pi 3 because I have too many of them and they all sort of look similar. Other than the Raspberry Pi 3, what we need for setting up UBOS is an SD card, a micro SD card. That is what the Raspberry Pi is going to boot from. It is going to go in here in a minute. And usually when setting up a new computer like this, it's a computer like any other computer. It's just very small and very cheap. You need to attach a monitor and a keyboard and then go through all sorts of steps to install your operating system and your applications. Now it turns out I don't actually have a spare keyboard, well, I actually have a spare keyboard, but I don't have a spare monitor lying around. So I much rather set this up without ever attaching a keyboard and a monitor to it. That is not usually possible, but UBOS makes that possible. And so that's what we're going to do because I'm too lazy to disconnect the monitor and move it around. And so we're going to install it without that over the network. And in order to do that, we need one more thing, which is in addition to the SD card, right? Raspberry Pi 3 SD card. And we need one more thing, which is a USB stick. This one looks a bit like a key. And I like to use that as the UBOS staff. We get to what that is in a minute. This will allow us to get the credentials, the password essentially, actually the SSH key, but the secret information needed so we can actually access our Raspberry Pi over the network securely. And so now we have the parts. The first thing we need to do is prepare the SD card. We will have to put UBOS on here, and number two, prepare the UBOS staff so we know that we have credentials to log into the Raspberry Pi over the network. And I will be doing both of those on my Mac. So let me switch over to my Mac and give you a screencast on how to put UBOS on the SD card and prepare the UBOS staff. Thank you. Here I am on my Mac, and the first thing we should do is visit the UBOS website so we can follow the documentation how to install UBOS and then Nextcloud. Documentation seems like a good choice. There are two further choices for users and for developers. Today we will be a user. And here in the first chapter of the user documentation, we have all sorts of choices for how to install UBOS on different kinds of hardware. And we will be using a Raspberry Pi 2 or 3. The instructions are the same for those two Raspberry Pis. And the first thing, the first step here is to download a boot image from this particular URL. We're looking for a file named ubos yellow rpi2 latest.img.xz. So here we are, and that is actually this file right here. So we click on that, which has the build number in it, so we know when it was built. And we will be downloading and saving this file. I will stop the recording here for a minute because the file is going to take a couple minutes to download. Okay, the download has finished, and let's go back and see what the next steps are. In step 2, we need to uncompress the downloaded file. So let's open up the terminal. I have done this already here, and use this command to uncompress the downloaded file. Firefox puts the downloaded files into the downloads folder. So that is what we are going to use. Here's our command. That takes a little while. It's a big file, and so uncompression takes a little while. In the meantime, we can see what step 3 is. In step 3, we have to write this image file to the micro SD card we are going to put into the Raspberry Pi. There are instructions for different operating systems. I'm currently on Mac OS X, so I follow those ones. There is something really important about that, which is that it is really easy to get the name of the disk wrong when writing the image file to the SD card. So I recommend you follow the instructions exactly in order to avoid the disaster in deleting the wrong disk attached to your Mac. And the way to do that is essentially to have the operating system tell us here, OS X, tell us what disks are attached. Then we insert the SD card and look again, and whatever device was added to the list is the one we want. So let's go over here. Our uncompression here has completed. And let's see what kind of devices I already have connected to my Mac. Disk util list. I have a number of them attached. You probably have not as many. And so that's what I've got already. Now I take the SD card and have put it in a sleeve and put it directly into the Mac's SD card port. You could use a USB adapter, or various kinds of ways of connecting your SD card. Doesn't really matter how. It has right here shown up on the desktop. And let's perform this command again and see what's different. And if I scroll between the old and the new, we have a disk 0, 1, 8, and 10 in the old, the before state, and now we have a 0, 1, 8, 9, and 10. So the disk number 9 has shown up. It wasn't there before. So disk 9 is the one we want. Let's see what it says. Okay, yeah, OS X might have automatically mounted it, which it has. It has shown up on the desktop. So what we're going to do is first unmount it. Take copy paste is easiest, and it would be def disk 9. Okay, oops, yeah, we see that the icon has disappeared, so we must have mounted the correct disk. And now we write the image using DD. Here we have a command we can copy. I'm going to only copy part of it Actually, let me erase the screen. It's easy to read that way. So I'm going to, actually not PC, it is a Raspberry Pi version. Here we are. And then what's the rest of the command? Okay, OF. Let's not hit return on this one yet. It was rdisk 9. And let's execute this. I have to provide my root password because root is required to write the image on any kind of disk in RAW format. Now that takes a little while because SD cards aren't particularly fast, and it's an entire operating system that needs to be put on the SD card. It says here it might take 10 minutes or longer depending on the speed of the sticker SD card. And when we're done, we're going to say sync. So I am going to stop the recording again here and come back when the disk writing operation here is complete. Okay, the disk write operation has completed. Lots of bytes were transferred. And going back to the instructions here, I already have executed the sync command, which is really, strictly speaking, not necessary, just a bit paranoia. Then we go back to the main instructions and we find that the next step, we should have a monitor and keyboard connected to the Raspberry Pi. However, that is impractical in my case because I don't want to disconnect another monitor that I have already connected to my Mac here. So I much rather use create a UBOS staff. How does this work? Well, there's a lot of description, and we don't really want to go for this right now. What we're going to do is just jump right into how to do that. So we need a UBOS staff device. You remember the key-shaped USB stick that I had earlier, and I'm now going to insert that stick into my Mac. Here we are. It showed up as a disk called no name. There is nothing on it. And it needs to have a VFAT Windows partition called UBOS staff. You can actually, if you have a regular stick that you have never reformatted, chances are the only thing you really need to do is change the name of the device. Rename to UBOS-staff. And that is actually all that is needed to identify this device as a UBOS staff device. We can put a particular key on it that we might have already, but that is complicated. Let's just have UBOS auto-generate a new key pair, which is this paragraph down here. So we just have to insert this device on our Raspberry Pi during boot, and UBOS will automatically generate the key pair. So let's do that. Let's eject both the staff device and the boot device. And let's see, go back to the instructions. And now we can actually insert it into the Raspberry Pi and boot with it. Please ignore that on this page it always talks about the Raspberry Pi 2. The instructions are the same for the Raspberry Pi 2 and Raspberry Pi 3. Now that we have UBOS installed on the SD card right here, and we have the flash drive prepared as the UBOS staff, we can put our system together and boot UBOS and access it over the network. So I'm going to insert the SD card here into the Raspberry Pi and stick the USB stick here in one of the USB ports and connect power and Ethernet. So actually do the Ethernet first. This is an Ethernet wire that plugs into my home router, or your network, whatever network you have. We can't do this over Wi-Fi. This is more complicated. Wi-Fi is not quite easy enough to set up to make this possible. So Ethernet in this case is much better just for booting purposes. And then I am going to power up the Raspberry Pi. Here we are. And now let's go back to the screen, the Mac screen, because the rest we are going to do over the network. This Raspberry Pi could now be put in some kind of server cabinet, or wherever you hide your electronics. You don't really have to interact with it directly, and you don't really ever have to connect a keyboard or a monitor to it. Okay, the Raspberry Pi has been powered on. The SD card and the staff device are in it. And I will have to wait for a few minutes because upon the first boot, UBOS generates some cryptographic keys, and that's always an operation that takes a long time. So I have already waited a few minutes, and it would be nice to see on a monitor when UBOS has booted, but we don't have a monitor attached to this device, so we have to check over the network. The way to do that is go back to our terminal and ping the Raspberry Pi, and its name is UBOS Raspberry Pi 2.local. Now, of course, it is a Raspberry Pi 3, but the image is the same for the Raspberry Pi 2 and 3, and so we had to pick one name, and the Pi 2 has older rights than the Pi 3, so that's why it's the Raspberry Pi 2 here. This is what's called an MDNS, automatically allocated DNS entry that you can look up. So this avoids that you have to set up DNS, which is a complicated affair. In many cases, there is actually a description here in the documentation how to set up DNS differently if you would like to do that. But on the first try here, let's stick with the default. So let's ping it and see what happens. And indeed, we can ping it. It has an IP address, and the boot was successful. Great. So let's log into it. How do we log into it? We use SSH, but for that we need to have either a password or keys. Now, UBOS doesn't like passwords because they tend to be insecure, and we should have gotten rid of them a long time ago. But so we take an SSH key, and fortunately we don't actually have to generate one. UBOS has done that for us already because we inserted the UBOS staff stick during the first boot, and now I have taken that stick back out, the key-shaped USB device that you remember from earlier, and I will plug it here into my Mac, and hopefully that will come up right here. Let's see, there is now all of a sudden a directory that wasn't there before. UBOS put that there, and if we look into it, then we find another one, SSH, and inside here we have two files, which is the public and the private key that we can use to SSH into our device. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy the private key here on the local hard drive first, and so the way to do that is, let's just say copy this file to, I'm just going to put it into my home directory. Let's call it UBOS Raspberry Pi 2 dot ID RSA. I can call it whatever I like to call it. I just take this name so I can remember what this file was all about. And then this is a private key, so this is something we need to protect. Let's make sure that only I have access to it and nobody else on the computer. Okay, now let's SSH into our Raspberry Pi, and the way to do that is we say SSH, we specify the key that we want to use, and then we say shepherd, because we are now the shepherd of this particular Raspberry Pi, wielding our staff as the shepherds are supposed to do, and we use the same host name that we've used earlier. And Okie dokie, here we are. I have a little permissions problem here on my Mac, but that's okay. I just say continue connecting. That's fine. Ignore those error messages. I should have changed the permissions on this directory before recording this video, but it makes no difference. So here we are. All of a sudden, we have a shell on our Raspberry Pi. Yay! Now, let's continue. What does it say here? When the boot process is finished, log in as root. That's not what we did because we used the UBOS staff and we logged in over the network as the shepherd. We can skip over the next few steps here because it's quite clear we have an IP address. Otherwise, how could we have logged into the Raspberry Pi over the network? So we skip this. What we should do though is to update the code to the latest and greatest. So I'm going to copy paste this command over here. There's a sudo in front. It needs to be done as root. This will download whatever packages were updated since the image was created or the image was installed on the Raspberry Pi. And in this case, there weren't any, which is good, but you should be running that command occasionally anyway to be current. Now we are ready to set up our first app and site. Great. Step 1, decide which web app to install. Yeah, we know that already. We want Nextcloud. And then we decide which URL we'd like to run the web app at. So what's the host name that we're going to type into our browser to access Nextcloud? And for this example here, we're just going to use the hostname that already exists that UBOS automatically provided here, UBOS Raspberry Pi 2.local. If you'd like to do something else, then you have to set up DNS in one way or another, which is more complicated. There are instructions here setting up networking and DNS for more complicated setups. And to create our Nextcloud installation, finally, we say ubos admin create site. Let's do that. Sudo ubos admin create site. And we'll ask you which app to run. That's the name of the package. The name of the package is Nextcloud 9. And it will now download those packages. That will take a little bit because Nextcloud is a rather big application. And there are also dependencies. Of course, we need to have a web server, we need to have PHP, we need to have a database, and that takes a little bit downloading all of these packages. The UBOS, of course, hides from you that Nextcloud 9 needs a database or needs PHP. Well, maybe it doesn't hide it from you, but it doesn't make you worry about it. All the dependencies and all the configuration is being performed automatically. So you can just say, I'd like to run the app Nextcloud 9, and that's it. So this download is taking a little bit. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, the download has finished, and we are going to the next step, hostname. Now we're going to enter the hostname that we have already, UBOS Raspberry Pi 2.local, and we need to give it a path at that hostname, so that constitutes the URL. Apparently, the suggestion is to call it Nextcloud. Why not? Then it asks for accessories. Let's not worry about accessories for right now and just hit return. And then we need to set up a administrative user that for the site and the applications at the site, so we can securely log in as soon as the application is up and running. Okay, let's call it admin. That's fine. Username, we can call it whatever. Let's call it admin again. I'm going to give it a password and an admin user email. Let's call it demo@ubos.net. And as soon as we have done that, there are some more packages to download, and UBOS will install our application. Okay, it took a little bit, but here we are. After downloading packages, UBOS has been deploying Nextcloud, and it reports that it has installed a site with some long identifier, which we don't otherwise worry about at this particular URL. Well, let's see whether that's true. Let's copy this and type it into our browser. And oops, here we are. There is a overview screen. It's clearly running UBOS. And here is an icon for Nextcloud 9. Nextcloud is so new in the UBOS repositories, it doesn't have the correct application icon yet. So it just got the default. Never mind about that, but we can click on it. And here comes the Nextcloud login screen. You can see that the URL here has Nextcloud in it, just as we specified it over here, context path. Now, let's remember what our admin user ID and username was. That was admin. Okay, type in admin and the password. And I'm going to hit return. And let's wait for it. What will happen? Nextcloud is coming up. Here we are. Now you can share files on your Raspberry Pi. There is a little message here about problems with the code integrity check. Ignore that for the time being. This has to do with a patch that we currently have to do for Nextcloud compared to the upstream version of Nextcloud, but it has been merged into the upstream version, and the next time there is a Nextcloud release in UBOS, that error message or warning message should be gone away. Here, the screen has come up, and there are some default files that the Nextcloud ships with. Let's take San Francisco here and see whether the file comes up. Okay, that was it. Here it is, Raspberry Pi 3 with UBOS and Nextcloud. And we can actually now remove the UBOS staff. We don't need it again, unless we'd like to change the Shepherd's SSH key, which is not something that one usually does very often. Or if you have another Raspberry Pi or any other UBOS device that you'd like to use the same credentials for, just stick that stick into it when booting, and you have set up new credentials. So this Raspberry Pi now can go into some kind of server closet or in some place wherever you hide your electronics. We don't really have to interact with it again. It will work just fine on the network. See you next time.